Australia's economy is shifting fast, but are we headed for a boom, a bust, or something no one saw coming? We're standing at an economic crossroads. For decades, Australia has thrived on mining booms, global exports, and a property market that felt bulletproof. But that old playbook? It's starting to wear thin. COVID left cracks, the war in Ukraine jolted global trade, and inflation? It's forcing everyone, from families to businesses, to rethink what they spend, what they save, and what the future even looks like. Australia's relationship with China, its largest trading partner, is evolving fast. Add to that a rising US dollar, volatile commodity prices, and growing pressure to cut emissions, and you've got an economy that's not just changing, it's being reshaped. But there's one factor quietly driving Australia's next economic chapter, and almost no one is talking about it. Meet Liam. He runs a small logistics company on the outskirts of Sydney. 5 years ago, things were good, booming even. Mining exports meant contracts were flowing. Clients needed more trucks, more workers, more storage space. But now, he's had to lay off 2 drivers. His warehouse costs have gone up 30%, and a shipping delay from China just wiped out a whole week of business. It's like we're stuck, Liam says. Not sinking, but not moving forward either. His story mirrors the nation's. GDP growth has slowed to just over 2%. Inflation still hovers above 4%, eating into everyday spending. And while unemployment is officially low, underemployment tells a different story. More Aussies than ever are juggling part-time gigs just to stay afloat. But what if Australia's next economic gold mine isn't in the ground, but in the sky? Behind the headlines, a quiet revolution is happening. In the outback, massive solar farms are springing up where cattle stations used to dominate. Out west, retired miners are being retrained to install wind turbines. And in Melbourne, tech startups are hiring faster than they can find coders. It's a shift that's subtle but seismic. AI is changing how mining works, from predictive maintenance to fully autonomous operations. In the healthcare sector, Aussie-built robots are assisting surgeries. And Australia's universities, long dependent on international students, are bouncing back, with demand for data science, clean tech, and cybersecurity degrees exploding. These aren't just jobs. They're indicators of an entirely new economy taking shape. But as we race into the future, a major roadblock is looming, and it's not what you think. Let's zoom in on 2 snapshots of today's Australia. In Queensland, a town once known for sugarcane now floods almost every year. Insurance premiums have doubled. Locals talk of climate fatigue, a constant state of rebuilding. Meanwhile, in Western Australia, a startup just landed a $10 million grant to scale solar-powered battery tech. Its founders? All former employees from a now-closed coal plant. These contrasts are the heart of Australia's challenge. There's a growing skills gap. Tech jobs outnumber skilled workers 2 to 1. Young talent is leaving for Silicon Valley or Berlin, and many regional communities are being left behind, without the infrastructure or support to pivot. Even in the cities, aging transport systems and energy grids are struggling to keep up with demand. It's a transformation story, but one with deep friction. So what can everyday Aussies and global investors do to prepare? Here's where things get interesting. If you're an investor, 2025 might be your signal year. The Australian government is pumping billions into clean tech, everything from solar incentives to electric vehicle rebates. And early adopters are already seeing returns. Let's play it out. Imagine putting $1,000 into a green energy ETF in 2025. Based on current trends, that could grow 8–12% annually through the decade, especially as global demand for decarbonized power surges. But it's not just markets. Australian homeowners are adding rooftop solar at record rates. Biotech startups are partnering with research institutions, and agtech is transforming farming with AI-based soil mapping and climate forecasting. But here's the kicker. Even the best investments could backfire without one key ingredient. That key ingredient? Resilience. Australia has reinvented itself before, from sheep to gold, from gold to iron ore. Each shift brought uncertainty, but also opportunity. Now the nation stands at its greatest inflection point yet. It's not just about economic growth, it's about sustainable, inclusive growth. It's about building industries that can withstand climate shocks, systems that can support workers, not just replace them, and cities that grow smarter, not just bigger. And here's the truth. The decisions made in the next 5 years will define the next 50. So, is Australia ready? What do you think the future holds? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're building a community that decodes the geography of power, wealth, and change every week. Don't forget to subscribe. Let's shape the future together. Australia's economic engine has long been fueled by trade, and no partner has loomed larger than China. For nearly 2 decades, China's hunger for iron ore, coal, and gas built the foundations of Australia's modern prosperity. But now, that dynamic is shifting. Tensions have simmered. Diplomatic spats turned into tariffs on barley, wine, and even beef. Chinese students and tourists, once a staple of Australia's service economy, dropped sharply after COVID and the tech Cold War between Beijing and Washington intensified. And while relations are slowly stabilizing, the question remains, can Australia afford to depend so heavily on one buyer? Many economists say no. The response? Quiet diversification. Australia is quietly strengthening ties with India, Japan, Vietnam, and the EU. New trade deals are being signed. Education providers are opening campuses in South Asia. And Aussie wine producers? They're now courting wealthy buyers in Dubai and Singapore. But what happens when a country built on exports has to turn inward to survive? For decades, Australia thrived by selling to the world. But now, more attention is being paid to what's happening inside its borders. Homegrown industries, once seen as too niche or too expensive, are starting to shine. Think local manufacturing using recycled materials. Think food producers delivering zero-waste, farm-to-door kits. Think fintech startups creating Aussie-built tools for managing inflation-hit wallets. Even the housing crisis, as dire as it seems, has sparked a building boom in regional towns, driven by remote work and rising city prices. But here's the twist. This domestic revival isn't just economic, it's cultural. Younger Aussies are showing growing skepticism toward global chains. They want local, ethical, green. They're backing businesses that support community. The kind that hire locally, cut carbon footprints, and pay fair wages, even if the price tag's higher. It's less about maximizing profit, more about meaningful profit. But there's one massive domino that could still tip everything out of balance. Ah yes, the Australian housing market. Equal parts national obsession and economic minefield. Prices in Sydney and Melbourne remain among the world's highest, but in the wake of COVID, things started to fracture. Interest rate hikes pushed mortgage repayments up by thousands per year. Construction delays spiked costs. Rental vacancies hit record lows, while homelessness crept upward. At the same time, investors, particularly international buyers, are eyeing suburbs in Brisbane, Adelaide, and Hobart. Why? Because those cities offer better yields and lower entry costs, for now. But here's the kicker. Most Australians now see housing not as shelter, but as an investment strategy. That mindset fuels demand, and demand in a limited supply market keeps prices absurdly high. The Reserve Bank is walking a tightrope. If rates rise too fast, people default. If they stay too low, the bubble swells. One report from 2024 predicted that without major housing reform, Australia could see a full-blown generational wealth crisis by 2035. That's not far off. And if that happens, the ripple effect could reshape every part of the economy, from education to retirement. Here's something you won't hear on the nightly news. Australia's real superpower might be its brainpower. Its universities rank among the world's best. International demand for Aussie degrees is recovering fast. And a surge in STEM grads is fueling everything from biotech to aerospace. But there's a catch. Many of the best and brightest are being snapped up by overseas companies, or worse, leaving Australia altogether. It's a modern brain drain, and it threatens to rob the country of its future growth. And on the flip side, thousands of workers in construction, mining, and manufacturing now find their skills obsolete. AI is replacing roles. Green tech is rewriting job descriptions. And many older workers feel left behind. The government is investing in retraining programs, yes, but the scale of transformation needed is massive. We're talking national-level curriculum rewrites, trade school overhauls, lifelong learning incentives. Because here's the bottom line. If Australia can't match workers to future industries, it won't just fall behind, it'll stall entirely. So what's the bold move that could flip this script and spark a true economic rebirth? It's not just about money or trade, it's about infrastructure. And in 2025, that means one thing: digital capacity. Australia ranks well in global internet penetration, but speed and access, especially in rural areas, are lagging. Entire regions still rely on satellite coverage. That's not good enough for a nation aiming to lead in tech and climate innovation. 5G rollout? Still patchy. Cybersecurity? A growing concern, especially after a series of high-profile breaches in 2023 that exposed millions of identities. And yet, there's hope. New public-private partnerships are emerging. Smart city initiatives are taking off in Brisbane and Perth. Indigenous tech leaders are launching platforms that fuse traditional knowledge with data science. And SpaceX's Starlink is quietly transforming outback internet access. Still, these efforts need scale, urgency, leadership. Because if Australia wants to power a future based on clean tech, remote work, and digital trade, it needs more than ambition. It needs bandwidth. But all this progress means nothing if one crucial issue isn't addressed, and it's the one no politician wants to touch.
Here's what almost no one is talking about when they discuss Australia's economy: the growing wealth gap. It's not just a social issue, it's an economic time bomb. In the last decade, the top 10% of households have seen their wealth grow at triple the rate of the bottom 50%. Why? Asset ownership. If you owned property, stocks, or a business, you won. If not, you're still trying to catch up. And it's not just about income, it's about access. Access to quality education, affordable healthcare, even decent public transport, all of which directly affect economic participation. In Western Sydney, young families are being priced out of the housing market, and even out of rental markets. In remote parts of the Northern Territory, unemployment is double the national average, and Indigenous communities are still battling systemic barriers that keep generational wealth out of reach. And here's the twist. This inequality isn't just bad for the poor. It's bad for business, bad for innovation, and bad for long-term growth. Australia is facing something few nations are truly prepared for: a generational collision between wealth and opportunity. Boomers own nearly 50% of all residential property value and a majority of listed shares. Meanwhile, Gen Z and millennials are dealing with HECS debt, gig work, and record-low home ownership. And this is leading to tension, not just at the family dinner table, but in policy. Young voters are calling for wealth taxes, superannuation reforms, and stronger climate action. Older voters, meanwhile, want to protect retirement income, capital gains, and dividend payouts. What's emerging is a split economy, where two groups live in the same country, but under vastly different financial realities. Some economists are warning, if this isn't addressed with bold, future-proof policy, Australia risks locking an entire generation out of economic stability. And when that happens, productivity crashes, consumption shrinks, and the social contract, it starts to tear. Most countries treat climate change like a long-term issue, but for Australia, it's a right-now issue. Floods, fires, and heat waves aren't just hurting ecosystems, they're hitting the economy hard. In the past 5 years alone, climate disasters have cost Australia more than $35 billion in direct damages. That's not including insurance hikes, disrupted tourism, or lost agricultural yields. Queensland's banana growers, losing crops to drought one year, flooding the next. Victorian wineries, battling smoke taint from wildfires, and coastal towns, watching property values drop as sea level rise becomes more than a theory. Now here's the economic gut punch. These climate costs are not equally distributed. Wealthier suburbs rebuild. Poorer ones don't. Some businesses adapt, others shut down. And as the climate hits harder, it becomes clear that Australia's economy isn't just transforming, it's being tested. And the biggest test is whether we can adapt fast enough without leaving entire regions behind. What if one of Australia's greatest economic opportunities has been ignored? For centuries, Indigenous-led businesses are on the rise, from eco-tourism ventures to sustainable farming to cultural design and digital platforms. And here's the kicker. Many of them aren't just profitable, they're resilient. Why? Because Indigenous business models often prioritise community, land stewardship, and long-term value, not just short-term gain. In the Northern Territory, Aboriginal land councils are developing solar farms. In WA, traditional knowledge is guiding water conservation projects. And across the nation, Indigenous entrepreneurs are rewriting what it means to grow a business in the 21st century. The challenge? Access to capital. Government support often stops at token programs, and many investors still hesitate, citing risk over understanding. But here's the truth. Unlocking Indigenous enterprise isn't charity. It's smart economics. It means jobs in rural areas, innovation rooted in sustainability, and an economy that reflects all of Australia, not just a slice. And in a future driven by inclusion and resilience, That might be the competitive edge Australia didn't know it had. Now let's talk risk, because no matter how well Australia plays its hand, it's still at the mercy of one giant wildcard, the global economy. What happens if the US enters a recession next year? What if China slows down more dramatically than expected? What if Europe's energy crisis lingers into 2026? Australia, as a trade-reliant nation, can't escape global ripples. Commodity prices would fall, international student numbers could dip again, foreign investment might pause, tourism could slump, and suddenly all that domestic momentum, it slows. Which is why some economists argue the key to Australia's future isn't just growth, it's anti-fragility, building systems that don't just survive shocks, but bounce back stronger. That means diversified trade, a nimble workforce, sustainable infrastructure, and leadership that isn't afraid to act boldly before the crisis hits. Because in a world of uncertainty, the real question isn't can we grow, it's can we endure. Australia's population is growing again. After the sharp slowdown during COVID, immigration is bouncing back, and it's becoming one of the biggest drivers of economic recovery. In 2024 alone, more than 400,000 new migrants arrived. Skilled workers, students, and families seeking a better future. They're not just filling jobs, they're opening businesses, renting apartments, spending money, paying taxes, and they're essential. The construction sector, propped up by migrant tradespeople. Healthcare, kept afloat by nurses from India and the Philippines. Tech startups, thriving on global talent. But here's the catch. Australia is growing, unevenly. Sydney and Melbourne are booming. Infrastructure is straining. Rents are skyrocketing. Meanwhile, rural towns are begging for doctors, engineers, and teachers, but can't convince new arrivals to settle there. It's not just a demographic issue, it's an economic one. Because if Australia doesn't find a way to balance growth across the country, it'll face two futures, one overpopulated and underbuilt, the other forgotten and fading. As the world fragments into geopolitical blocks, there's a new form of economic power emerging, and it's not about oil or steel, it's about data. Tech nationalism is the new game. Countries are racing to control their digital ecosystems, protect their cybersecurity, and foster homegrown tech champions. Australia is in the race, but trailing behind. Most of the tools we use, our cloud services, payment systems, social media, are foreign-owned. Local startups struggle to compete with US and Chinese giants. And critical infrastructure? Increasingly vulnerable to foreign surveillance and cyber attacks. But things are shifting. Canberra is investing in sovereign data centres. The government is considering regulations to force foreign tech giants to store data onshore, and a wave of Aussie-made AI tools is starting to gain traction in fields like agriculture, climate modelling, and education. Why does this matter? Because in a world where digital systems run everything, from power grids to pensions, economic independence depends on digital control. And if Australia can't secure its digital future, it might lose more than just data. It could lose its economic sovereignty. Let's zoom out. What kind of economy does Australia want in 2050? That's not just a philosophical question, it's a policy blueprint. And if we look at current trends, three possible futures emerge. Future 1, resource redux. Australia doubles down on mining, especially rare earths and lithium. Green minerals power EVs globally. But the economy stays boom-bust, and climate resilience lags. Future 2, tech and talent nation. Australia reinvents itself as a digital and education superpower, exporting knowledge, clean tech, and culture. Immigration fuels growth, but inequality remains a slow-burning issue. Future 3, green commonwealth. Australia becomes a model of sustainable capitalism. Regional hubs run on renewables, Indigenous knowledge guides land use, and local manufacturing surges. Each path has trade-offs, but the common thread? Choices made now will lock in outcomes for decades. And perhaps the real question isn't which path will we take, it's will we even choose, or will we drift into the future on autopilot? Let's bring it back to real life, with a tale of two towns. In northern Tasmania, a former timber town was facing extinction. Young people left, shops closed. But in 2023, something unexpected happened. A startup building drone components for bushfire detection set up shop in an old warehouse. Within a year, 45 new jobs were created. Locals started returning. Even the bakery reopened. Meanwhile, just 2 hours away, another town, equally beautiful, equally historic, missed out. Grants fell through. Young people moved to Melbourne. The hospital closed. 2 towns, 1 state, same challenges, different outcomes. Why? Leadership, local investment, and someone believing the future could be built, not waited for. And that's the deeper truth in all of this. Australia's future won't be decided in headlines or spreadsheets. It'll be written in the decisions made by real people, in real places, every single day. So, what's going to push Australia to take bold action? Is it another crisis, a market crash, another climate disaster, or a political shake-up? Or is it something quieter? A generation stepping into leadership, a wave of innovation, a growing sense that the old ways just aren't working anymore. History shows us that true economic transformation never happens by accident. It takes pressure, it takes friction, and most of all, it takes vision. The pieces are already on the board. The question is whether anyone's willing to make the move. And if we're heading for a game-changing moment, it may come faster than anyone expects.